Human plus computer, when combined, will deliver better results than either would alone. That used to be my closing line for my inspirational closing line for years whenever I gave a talk. I don't say that anymore because I'm kind of not sure now. We found, and we're not the only others found, Google's recent paper on AMI, many mammogram studies have shown, I don't know, computer sometimes by itself does better than the human using that computer. It's like the human is actually slowing the computer down and getting in the way. And it really begs these uncomfortable questions about what the right role is for human and computer in modern medicine.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of NEJM AI Grand Rounds. I'm Raj Madrai, and I'm here with my co-host Andy Beam. And today we are thrilled to bring you our conversation with Dr. Jonathan Chen. Jonathan is an associate professor of medicine and of biomedical data science at Stanford University. He's been working on medical AI for more than a decade. And Andy, like us, I think John came up through his training during the deep learning era, where we were primarily focused on image-based models, pre-LLMs. And so it was fascinating and fun to really reminisce about our predictions then versus where we are now and explore some of his early work in deep learning and now LLMs.
Totally agree, Raj. A highlight of this conversation for me was the discussion around something called the fundamental theorem of informatics, which is this thing that has been around in informatics for a long time. And it was the observation that a human with a computer is better than a computer by itself or a human by itself. And it really was a statement about the synergy between people and technology. And what's fascinating is that in the age of AI, the fundamental theorem of informatics is kind of being overturned. It's not clear that a human and AI is better than an AI by itself. And Jonathan does a great job of walking us through the evidence that has convinced him that maybe the fundamental theorem of informatics is no longer true. He's been a big proponent of the theorem for a long time, but we're in this really interesting time where actually maybe we don't have the right interfaces for AI and people to be better than either on their own. And so really, really fascinating conversation. And Jonathan does a great job at sort of walking you through his own evolution on that topic. The NEJM AI Grand Rounds podcast is brought to you by Microsoft, VizAI, Lyric, and Elevance Health. We thank them for their support. And with that, we bring you our conversation with Jonathan Chen. Jonathan Chen, thanks so much for joining us on AI Grand Rounds. We're super excited to have you today.
Fantastic. Been really glad to come here.
Jonathan, great to have you on the podcast. So this is a question that we always get started with, and we ask all of our guests. Could you tell us about the training procedure for your own neural network? How did you get interested in artificial intelligence, and what data and experiences led you to where you are today?
Oh, wow. I don't know. How long do you want this origin story to go for?
You could go as long as you want. As long as you want. Yeah.
I'll try to do some of the triggers and key life moments, which I think is actually really important as we all navigate our life choices. So the odd fact about myself, I started college when I was 13 years old. There was a program at Cal State LA that let me do that. And so I don't know what you all wanted to do when you were 13 years old. I would have said, I don't know, I'll be a stand-up comedian. I have no idea. Why would you think about that? Who cares? You're 13, right? But suddenly I had to think about it. Wait a minute. What am I training for? Where am I headed towards? And of course, my parents want me to be a doctor, or my mom wanted me to be a doctor. I'm like, sure, that sounds like a hard but important thing to do, I guess. Even though I was really a computer nerd and my dad was an electrical engineer, that was much more my natural gravitation. I'm going to play a lot of video games. Headed towards medical school, did really well in the MCAT, officer in pre-med club, and I kept always hearing about how you have to have a passion for medicine. You have to be, your life's mission is to be a healer. You have to really feel that. I was like 18 years old at the time. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but at 18, I felt nothing. I'm not ready to commit my life towards this path. I got to do something else. I really like computers. I like programming. I'm good at it. I find this enjoyable problem solving. And so I just worked as a strip software developer, industry IT for a couple of years. And that was pretty cool. And I was paid pretty well to do it. And then I also saw the industry isn't as inspiring as I thought it'd be in terms of the values it espouses. So then I thought, hey, wait a minute, maybe a joint degree, an MD and a PhD in computer science, that would be really cool. Nowadays, it seems like it makes so obvious sense. We have a whole dedicated NEJM AI journal. 20 years ago, I think it was kind of weird. The medical schools thought I looked kind of funny, but I don't know where this is going, but I think this combination is going to be very compelling. And has certainly taken it out that way. This AI computer doing my homework for me, that's actually really what I've really always wanted to do, but applied it towards medical problems where things matter towards human health.
Amazing. I knew some of that, John, but I didn't know that you worked at a company before starting medical school, right? And so where did you work?
So I work at Trilogy Software. It's originally out of Stanford. I was no affiliation at the time. They're based in Austin, Texas now. And I was there for years. The dot-com like bubble at the time, right? So everyone was blowing up at this point. And once my mom saw I was 19 years old, had a six-figure salary coming straight out of college, and this was 20 years ago, suddenly medical still didn't seem that important anymore. But also, I was at that company where they laid off a third of the entire staff a year later. And like, oh, okay. You see what the values really are. You see who's really going to look out for you and who really won't, and they're going to cover themselves. Like, just values in industry are very different. And nobody's evil, but if it's a for-profit company, right, they're going to look out for themselves at the end of the day. I actually went back to work for 20th Century Fox IT department. That's where I did an
Wow.
internship in college. So yeah, you just walk in the studio a lot, walk by a few celebrities, but just like IT systems, contracts, and finances. And it was cool. I actually had fun
Yeah.
working there. It was a very good crew, and it was a really good job, and I was good at it. But I could also see, am I going to feel rewarded if I'm still doing this 10 years from now? I think I need to live as a starving student for a little bit longer to have a little bit more purpose and inspiration in my life.
Ki-
And after, I'll tell you this story. When I was laid off from the industry job so many years ago, it felt like the first failure in my life. I mean, I was like 18, I was like 19. I mean, whatever, right? But in the scheme of things, but I was always a super smart student. I was kick butt at everything. It was very kind of eye opening to me. But it also, what it really made me feel is like, wow, I worked so hard there, and then you just get laid off flippantly anyway. Like, I kind of feel like I regret how I spent the last year of my life. Why was I toiling so hard for? I'm exaggerating a little bit, but now the reason I've gone into medicine and AI and computational applications is now I work myself to death. I've been stressed out for 20 years nonstop. I've been stressed out nonstop. But if I were to die tomorrow, if I were to be laid off, I'd be fired, I would be sad, but I would not regret how I've been spending my time because I feel like I'm trying to do something worthwhile.
Nice. Can we go back a little bit? I mean, it sounds like you were born with a couple extra gears there, but how does one become ready or eligible to go to college at 13? Like, what grades did you skip? Like, were you taking college classes on the side as like a 9-year old? Like, yeah, tell us about that.
I was just regular public school. I didn't do any special thing. I didn't have any particular special tutoring. I was just a nerd kid, right? And that was kind of my distinction at the time. But there's a program at Cal State LA, I think it's still running now, called the Early Entrance Program. And just people in the local area, you can take a test. And if you do okay, you can take a summer quarter there to see how you do, to make sure you're not just academically, but kind of emotionally ready to be in that environment. And that ended up working very well. It started as an experiment in their psychology department. What would happen if you took really bright 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds and let them be in a college environment? What would happen? And then it worked so well, it's become this continuous program ever since. And for me, so I went up to eighth grade. And then after that, I'm technically a high school dropout. I don't have a GED. I don't have an equivalent. I just didn't
Wait,
show
so
up
you
to high
didn't do
school.
you didn't do any high school?
No, my friends who went on to high school, they said the teachers kept calling roll call, and Jonathan Chen, are you here? Jonathan, like they kept calling for like a month until they gave up, realizing I was not going to show up. Because I didn't tell anybody either. I just didn't show up to high school, and I went to this program.
Well,
Wow.
you're only the second doctor I've ever met who doesn't have a GED. My wife's grandfather
Nice.
doesn't have a GED and went on to medical school, but times were very different. And his was not the result of acceleration; it was the result of a world war, I think.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's a different dynamic. Different dynamic.
Cool.
Wow. So, John, I think that's a good point to transition. So, you've taken us up through your training, you finished your graduate degrees, finished all the school, and then you started your lab. And you've been, I think, doing a lot of work in machine learning and medicine, not just in the sort of recent LLM era, but you were really interested in this topic long before ChatGPT and large language models became sort of common parlance. And you wrote this paper that I remember this caught my eye. I think maybe I was a postdoc or something with Andy, and we saw this in New England Journal of Medicine. I remember discussing this way back in the day because first of all, it was titled pretty well, and that caught our eye. And then I think you were sort of pushing back on a little bit of the hype that was in the literature and then outside of the literature at the time. So the title of this paper is Machine Learning and Prediction in Medicine Beyond the Peak of Inflated Expectations. And this was a perspective that you published in the New England Journal back in 2016. And maybe can you just take us through why you wrote that paper? What triggered you to just sit down, write that, submit it, and what were you trying to really argue in the paper itself?
Sure, it's this interesting irony, but that is by far my most cited paper. like over 1,000 citations, and it's something I hacked together in 3 days. And versus the RCT, the human computer interactions that I worked on a year on, it's still good, but it's not nearly the same attention. But it built up a lot. The first draft title I put was much sassier. It said, machine learning, tell me something I don't know, right? Because a lot of time algorithms are predicting things that the doctor already knows, and it's kind of stupid. I'll tell you, my graduate school, my PhD was with Pierre Baldi, University of California, Irvine. And like literally he wrote the book on a machine learning approach to bioinformatics. So that's really where I learned a lot of my skills from. And my underlying nerd interest is because I'm that nerd kid, right? Oh, so what is it that makes an expert? What is intelligence? How do you make a computer do that? If I was just doing stuff for fun, I'd be programming robots to play StarCraft and poker or something like that. That's what I would actually be doing. But with purpose, I applied to medicine. And it was interesting in my graduate school, I was actually creating a rules-based expert system, if you want to call it, for organic chemistry, for drug design and education. And one of my thesis committee members said, Jonathan, literally your PhD advisor is the expert in machine learning and bioinformatics. How come you don't have any machine learning in your PhD thesis? And what I said was, I have learned enough about machine learning to know that I do not trust machine learning. You have this weird like probabilistic behavior that gives you the right answer maybe 80% of the time. Like I'm used to software engineering development. You need deterministic, reproducible like processes. And so how can you act in the real world when you're only 70, 80% sure? You're not even sure which times it's going to happen, and it gives you inconsistent results. But then, of course, machine learning is taken over the world. That was the hype thing, what was it, 10 years ago. And it is cool. It's important, but I certainly knew enough about it. Like, it's a useful tool. I don't think this is the answer to everything. And boy, was it getting overhyped at the time. I don't know if I should name names, but there was another piece that came out in the New England Journal just shortly before that. I forget the title. It's like machine learning, all of medicine's going to change. And like, it's a thing. It doesn't solve every problem.
Was it the Lost in Thought piece from friend of the show, Ziad Obermeyer, by chance?
May have been.
Okay.
May have been. And I was like, that's cool. I kind of have something to say. And also, I noticed my peers around me, very smart, very great people, like, wow, this machine learning, this computer stuff, it can predict the exact day you die. This is amazing. I'm like, that is totally not what that piece of research or tool can do. Oh, even very smart people around me don't really understand what this is and what isn't. And the reason I want to mitigate that is because, as you know, the history, the waves of AI winters and springs, right? For 50 years, people have been trying to make AI take over the world, and then they way overblow the expectations, and then it crashes. And people like us who actually care and are trying to make a difference, it's really hard to do that when the public has lost trust because, oh, well, you didn't actually change the world. So I was like, hey, there's exciting things here. And we should be excited about it. There is legitimate stuff, but we don't need to overhype it because let's manage our expectations and we can soften the crash into the inevitable trough of disillusionment and quickly move on to the slope
Maybe
of
just hop in
enlightenment.
here. Do you think we've hit a trough of disillusionment in AI and medicine?
I think we're onto the next wave already, right? In terms of like supervised machine learning, it's a great tool. I use it in a way to show how I think it should be done. I was never that. We were just from my graduate. Oh, Jonathan, you're the guy who does electronic medical records and machine learning. Like, really? That is really not what I want to be known as. I want to be known as fundamentally solving problems in medical decision making. So I think supervised machine learning, it did go through a trough. It didn't change everything, but now we're at it's kind of a reasonable tool to do many risk stratification things, and that's almost ordinary. We have established data science teams deploying that in real settings, but it didn't just magically find the cure for cancer, right? It didn't wipe out every radiologist job, et cetera. We're already on to the next wave. AI is just the buzzword of the day, the marketing buzzword, which is something cool a computer can do. And the balance being now, I wrote another piece in JAMA Internal Medicine on the fountain of creativity or Pandora's box, large language models. When I saw the first preview version GPT-4, I was like, holy crap, this actually is legitimately disruptive technology that I think is going to change everything. And I think why we're talking now.
That's another good transition, actually, to the next series of papers we wanted to talk about. So you've been doing a lot of work, and actually, Jonathan, some of this is work that we've done together. And you've been, I think, for several years now, doing some of the earliest studies on large language models and what they can do in terms of general diagnostic and management reasoning capabilities. And so it's a fascinating, fun space. I can't imagine, honestly, as just speaking now for research we're doing together and research in my lab, it's never been this fun because the sort of base technology is evolving so fast that problems that seemed like they would be solved years later are being solved in months, and you're just constantly having just to reevaluate and reassess what the sort of base technology itself can do. And I think some of the papers that I'll just highlight here, we should also first say, I think Ethan Go is the first author of both of these papers. And so he had a strong sort of instrumental role in pushing these through. One was that you published in JAMA Network Open last year, 2024, and then another that was more recently published in Nature Medicine in 2025. And you could take maybe one of those, maybe let's start with the JAMA Network Open one, and just maybe break down what the motivation was. I think also it would be educational for all of us what the timing was between when you conceptualized the study versus when it got executed, when it got published, and maybe what the challenges were in that study. So maybe starting again with the JAMA Network Open paper.
Sure, sure. There's this like natural kind of progression that kind of leads up to that, and then more after that we're kind of getting next. But yeah, Ethan Go, Rob Gallo are the key fellows who drove that work. Adam Rodman and the Beth Edgelson have been really key partner who's made a lot of that come together. But I see the early preview of GPT-4. I'm like, holy crap! I need to throw away half my research program because it was about like.
So just set the time
That's
for
like
us now.
2-ish years ago.
Okay,
What is
yeah.
that? It's just as ChatGPT is just emerging, basically.
Right.
That rolls around as a January or February at that time. And I was going to do things. Maybe one day I could make medical recommendations based on data, maybe based on literature. That's too hard. NLP doesn't work well enough. And then suddenly I think that's starting to happen. It not only could it make recs, but it can also explain them in a way. And it's not perfect. But 6 years ago, I had students trying to use transformers to answer medical questions because, hey, new transformer tech. I've been wanting to answer medical questions with computers for 20 years because I was so annoyed in medical school that I had to memorize all this stuff. 6 years ago, it was unusable, 35% accuracy. Guys, well, that was a fun class project, but there's no point in using this now. And then, then GPT 3.5 started to emerge. And then the obvious thing was to try to answer multiple choice questions. I didn't even bother because it was so obvious. I knew somebody else would do it. And indeed, like within a couple of months, multiple people tried to do that. And I peer reviewed some of those papers too. Then some of our medical educators, Eric Strong, Jason Hom, others, they really had the right as, hey, we have these complex, nuanced reasoning exams we give our students. It's not because we know multiple choice is fake and doesn't mean anything. What would happen if we try this chap on this? And so we did a joint study on that. And that was also very eye-opening. It's like, holy crap, it's kind of barely passes even these exams. And we were in the middle of getting peer reviewed. Just like the editor didn't have time to go out for peer review. It was so timely. And then suddenly they rejected us because they said, oh, GPT-4 just came out 2 days ago. This thing that you worked all to death, multiple late nights, and then you submitted 3 weeks ago is already obsolete. Oh my gosh. Like, what the heck? This is the bizarre pace of technology we're in. The peer review cycle cannot keep up with. And then what I say is, even then, that's cool. And then at the time, Adam Rodman, he had done some things on, and I think you were on that as well, doing NEJM CPC cases. So we kind of found a connection to the social media sphere. Adam and Eric Strong, they're kind of both social media influencers and sort of found each other. And so we did these two studies. Hey, we need to take it to the next level, which is a human interaction study that led to the one we're talking about.
And then could you take us through what the paper showed?
Sure. So we did multiple ones, but we did diagnostic case management cases. We broke it down to 2 papers. So complex, classic diagnostic dilemma cases. And we didn't want dumb multiple choice. We didn't even want just what's the final diagnosis, because that's a thing to do. But we want to understand like reasoning, because I think these things might even help you think. So we said, what do you think the diagnoses could be in these cases? Explain your reasoning, pros and cons. What will be your next steps? And this expert consensus grading rubric, which, oh man, is that a pain in the butt to do? Because you need human experts to do that grading. And then we did a randomized control trial. We got some pilot funding from the Moore Foundation to pull that off. Recruited live doctors, half of them with access to the usual standard of care, which would be doctor plus up-to-date, PubMed, Google, whatever you want to do, because that's a realistic benchmark. Benchmarks where it's like doctor by themselves, that's kind of stupid. Nobody practices that way anymore. And then we gave the other half. Let's give the other half GPT-4 at the time. I bet that's going to make a huge difference because this technology is surprisingly really good. And it was surprising result, and why I got so much attention, because the doctor plus the AI plus GPT-4, it didn't make that much difference. It was about the same as the doctor plus usual internet, which was totally not what we expected when we set out to do the study. We thought we were going to show it helped so much because we already knew, and then we showed it again. GPT-4, the AI by itself, outscored all of the doctors, including the doctors who had access to GPT-4. That was such a bizarre finding, because it really flies in the face of that fundamental theorem of informatics. I know we're going to talk about it in a second, of Human plus computer, when combined, will deliver better results than either would alone. Oh, that sounds so good, Andy. I see it makes you smile, right? That used to be my closing line for my inspirational closing line for years whenever I gave a talk. I don't say that anymore because I'm kind of not sure now. We found, and we're not the only others found, Google's recent paper on AMI, many mammogram studies have shown, I don't know, computer sometimes by itself does better than the human using that computer. It's like the human is actually slowing the computer down and getting in the way. And it really begs these uncomfortable questions about what the right role is for human and computer in modern medicine.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think that's a great transition, if it's okay with Raj. So I'm coming at this from a little bit of the opposite direction. I've always been a little bit of a gadfly in saying annoying things to primarily my long-suffering wife about.
I can corroborate this.
Yeah, about how AI
confirms.
Yeah, about how AI maybe will be able to do medicine better than people in the future. Could you maybe just restate the fundamental theorem of informatics succinctly, and then talk about the history of medical decision making and the extent to which that was true until we had this switch? And then I'd love to get your thoughts on, is it an interface issue? Is the theorem still true, but we're just not delivering the information correctly? What do you think's behind the apparent violation of the fundamental theorem?
Sure. I mean, it comes in different origins. I mainly attribute to Chuck Friedman and Charles Friedman, who put the fundamental theorem together. And I think he's really more talking about human plus a computer or an information resource should be better than the human, but I try to overly broad. You would think the combination of a human plus a computer should be better than either alone, right? The synergy, collaboration, it makes so much sense. But also, it's like a theorem. It's just some guy who said something that seems like it makes sense. It's not like there's specific evidence that supports that or underlying theory or mechanism. It's just like a phrase that seems like it has intuitive sense. And the reality is, go ahead.
A fundamental lemma or a fundamental a fundamental proposition of biomedical informatics. Yeah,
right. It's kind of, otherwise it justifies the whole thing. Otherwise, why do we work in biomedical informatics unless we thought that combination made sense? We're doing it because we think it will work. For what it's worth, it's not really a new thing. If you go look at internist QMR, there have been plenty of decision support, diagnostic decision processes, things, risk calculators for 30, 40, 50 years that have done better than humans at these tasks. I mean, I think, Raj, you had that great summary here, doctors are very bad at math. And it's not doctors, it's just humans are bad at math. Calculating post-test probability, they don't understand why screening and early detection just almost never works because the numbers just won't work in your favor. It's actually not really a new finding that I like to say, a calculator is better at calculations. You should just use a calculator. You shouldn't try to compete with a calculator at long division. That doesn't make sense anymore. But now just the emerging tools, it's not just long division. Now it's also risk calculation. Ooh, now it's also answering questions. Now it's turning into reasoning. Now it's turning into counseling and therapy. It's just more and more tasks the computer are able to do that before they weren't able to so much.
So
Go ahead.
Maybe a couple quick thoughts. So I could think of maybe two explanations, and they might be mutually exclusive. They might not be. So the fundamental theorem probably was not true when all we had were Unix terminal-based computers. Your average doctor doesn't want to hop in at the command line and access information this way. They need a mouse and keyboard. They need graphical user interfaces. So it could be that. Or it could be the situation in chess where, right after Deep Blue, humans plus computers were actually still better at chess. But then the models kept training, the engines got better, and now it's clear that we don't have a hope at beating strong chess engines. And that's a capability gap. And what I don't understand, given that we're kind of in the early days of this era of medical AI, if it's an interface, UI, UX kind of thing, or if it truly is a capability gap from which we will never catch up.
Ooh, how spicy you guys want to get here. The near term, the nice way I say it for now, is I do think a lot of it is education, human-computer interface interaction. Because in that study, which showed human plus computer was not that much better than human plus usual internet at the time, because this was early days of language models, right? It's probably a year and a half, 2 years ago. A third of the doctors in the study had never touched a chatbot before in their life. Another third maybe had used it once or twice, but really didn't know how to use it that well. And so they didn't know what a prompt was. They were using it like Google. They're what is differential for eye pain? Did you know you could just copy and paste the entire case story here and ask follow-up questions? 3 years ago, no, you did not know that, right? Because you could not have done that just 2 or 3 years ago. And so it was clear there's an education gap. And as we've done follow-up studies, if you kind of prime the doctor a little bit more, give them a little bit more setting, they can improve. It makes a difference. Although they still don't do better than the computer by itself, right? So then, okay, I don't know, maybe on this podcast we can say it out loud. In some cases, a computer is just better at certain things. And I think we should acknowledge that. And I don't think that devalues humans, by the way. That's the instinctive reaction people panic with. And it's a real feeling, but there's more than unlimited demand needed for actual human services and care. But I don't compete with a calculator on long division anymore. I'm not going to compete with a computer on memorizing every bug and every drug. And maybe now I'm not gonna use a computer. I'm not competing. I'm gonna use a computer to help me develop differential diagnoses when I'm unsure, for example.
If you were, and I think we actually will come back to this later, but like, what is the sphere of competence for human doctors that you feel like will be stable over a 5 to 10 year time horizon? Let's tell you, if you're a med school, I get asked this question all the time. I'm sure that you do. I'll give a talk on medical AI. Some very nervous medical student will come up to me and say, "Oh, good Lord, like I'm scared. Like, what should I actually study if the AI is getting better?"
Professor Beam, what are you doing to me here?
Yeah. Yeah.
I've certainly had that. I've had interns. I had medical students. I just gave this talk to a bunch of high school students. I was like, what are we even in school for? What are we supposed to do? The thing is, 5 to 10 years, the world can change really fast, right?
But that's how long
in terms
the
of where it
average med
goes.
student is in med school.
Yes,
So
yes. I had one of my old colleagues, Tom Savage, who's done a lot of great studies in this field, is like, I kind of feel like when people ask me advice, maybe they shouldn't go into medicine anymore because the AI is progressing so fast. I'm like, dude, if you want to do medicine, go do it. But boy, you better expect the field is going to change and it's not going to be practiced quite the same way. I don't know how many people here or how many people listening like existed before the internet was a thing. Like at one point, the internet was not a thing.
Yeah.
It's like 35 years ago, right? And used to the best doctor knew the whole physician's desk reference in their head. I can tell you every treatment, I know every side effect, and I can tell you the dose right now. Wow, what a great doctor. Now that's like stupid. Like it doesn't make sense. That's great if you know more, but everyone is expected to use this internet tool. And did that replace the need for doctors? Hey, patients, what do you need a doctor for? You can go to UpToDate yourself and look up what to do, right? No, you most definitely need doctors and nurses still. Having said that, I've been trying to, and it's been a lot harder to articulate. I had to work a lot harder the past year. People used to say, "Oh, I think AI can replace doctors." I'm like, either you don't understand AI or you don't understand medicine, and often both. The kind of people who say this kind of thing. I would be the first person to replace doctors with AI because there's patients who need us and we can't get to. I haven't done that yet because I don't think you can. We can replace some of our tasks, but it's a combination of knowledge, empathy, liability. That's actually the basics. All are necessary, but none are sufficient. It's actually judgment, influence, and negotiation, and professional responsibility. Being able to tie all of that into one person, one thing, I think is what you end up needing.
John, just one last point on this. So, do you have a sense, and I know it's very hard to predict, we're not predicting the past, we're predicting the future here, right? And so, very hard to predict where the fundamental evolution of the technology will go in the next couple of years. But I think from all your work on human-computer interaction, from thinking about your perspective as a clinician as well, do you think there are baskets or categories of tasks where AI will operate autonomously, and there are tasks where it really will be more of this sort of hybrid, human in the loop, and then there are tasks that are just untouchable right now by AI and are entirely human for the foreseeable future?
I mean, obviously, it's the whole spectrum. All of those will be maybe an interesting discussion. I'm here your guys' perspective too. Which task do you think will end up in each category? Just to expand on the prior analogy, right? Once like TurboTax and software got created, like, what do you need an accountant for? When you hire an accountant, all they do is they have their own version of that software, and they're just putting your data in. You clearly don't need this human, but we still have these humans because it's a service, it's a responsibility and advocacy that they can provide in a way. I could use the software, but I don't want to take the time to understand it. I'm afraid of making a mistake. I need someone to counter for me. So let's see in medicine, what were your three categories? Things that probably are just going to get automated. There's everything else is human in the loop in the middle. And what are things like ain't no computer going to do that at least anytime soon? Don't ever say ever because we'll obviously be wrong at that point, just whether it's in our lifetime. I assume you guys, well, actually, I published in NEJM AI. Zach asked me for that one, this who's training whom. I'm going to mess this chatbot up. okay, sure, it knows a lot of stuff. There's no way it can handle like an ethical dilemma or like complex counseling situation. And I said, chatbot, you pretend to be the doctor. I'm going to pretend to be the patient's wife. And I'll say, oh my gosh, my husband with Alzheimer's dementia, he's choking on his own food. He's a feeding tube. Oh, but we can't leave him to starve to death. He's going to fight for his life. I have to do everything I can to save his life. And the punchline at the end was this thing was providing better counseling than I did in real life, in that real life scenario. And boy, did that give me existential angst that night, thinking, what is the point of my existence at this point? Balanced by actually very inspiring, actually very cool. What a great training and learning tool I could use in a way that I never could have before. On the other hand, I think you still need those humans for all those combinations, but it's very obvious to me that a lot more people are going to receive therapy, counseling, and advice from automated bots than live human beings. It's already happening now. My wife talks to ChatGPT every day. It's more available than I am, and likewise, and understands situations.
Exactly. It's happening on massive scale, right?
Yeah.
And I think maybe going back to the fundamental theorem of informatics, right? I think if I'm interpreting or summarizing your comments about this, it's fundamentally an empirical claim, and to date we have not had, and especially with LLMs, but even more broadly machine learning, statistical modeling, we haven't had a lot of empirical evidence around how humans and AI work together on tasks, what can be done autonomously, what is unlikely to be interfered with. And I think we can speculate as to why. I think there is a lot of feelings, existential angst, other things that get wrapped up in here. And I think Andy and I can speak to that. We're not clinicians, but we are data scientists, machine learning researchers, and we're watching now this technology eat a lot of things that we thought we would only be able to do in terms of coding, in terms of proving mathematical propositions, and in terms of maybe even writing papers in the near future. And Andy can
you guys are much smarter than me.
Future.
I always knew I was planned for obsolescence. So you got just that, I'm a lower version of you two. So
it's been the goal all along.
Yeah. And so, it's understandable, like, right, where the idea that like, oh, we'll always have to work together for everything comes from. But then we had this great episode actually with Judy Gachoya, I don't know, a year or two ago on our editorial board. And she was like, guys, just actually think about what human in the loop means. It means that every decision coming out of the model is going to have to be reviewed by a human. That's like and they're all, or just the hard cases, right? And it's like an exhausting future, dystopian almost future, where the human is just the liability shield, the crumple zone, and just dealing with everything tough, right? And just like second guessing the machine, right? And like, so a lot of these things, they sound nice, but then you really think about how they'll operationalize, and you realize A, how little empirical support we have, but then B, how potentially dystopian some of these futures are, even if they sound nice now.
I'm with you. It's all of those combinations make sense. I wonder if another analogy is helpful just to deconstruct and reconstruct. And many people who talk to me and talk to you, I'm sure, says a lot of what a doctor does could clearly just be automated by those latest AI systems. And I actually think some subtasks that I don't think that's wrong. But then, so does that mean, oh, well, very soon we'll not need most doctors? It's like, well, I mean, actually, Bill Gates said this. Very soon, most teachers and doctors will not be needed. Like, well, okay. But then you say, well, what do you need a software engineer for? They just write code. Clearly, AI can write code now.
Just vibe it. Just vibe it. Just vibe it.
Just give it the requirements, and then off it goes.
Yeah.
So it's like, what do you need a venture capitalist for? They're reviewing companies. They're just taking some random bet on something anyway. And of course, the venture capitalists, no. What I do is complicated. That's not automatable. Like,
Mark Andreessen from A16Z has literally said this before in a apparent like lack of self-awareness, has said something exactly like that.
That probably was, didn't want to name names. That's probably said, oh, the venture capital, obviously a doctor can replace. They just do like standard reasonings. Like, do you think a venture capital? Oh, no. What I do is special. And I actually think what everybody does is special in that way. But boy, would it be foolish to imagine all of our worlds are not going to change substantially. And I certainly liken it. It's like the internet being invented. It didn't result in everybody losing their jobs. It's like we have unlimited demand. There's plenty to do. But if you think your job is going to be the same as it was 5 years ago, oh, you're setting up for pain. If you were a travel agent before, if you were an Encyclopedia Britannica editor, your life kind of got messed up if you weren't able to change with the times.
Cool, thanks. So I think that's a great place to hit pause while people are nice and sweaty from all the anxiety from the conversation we just had, and move on to the lightning round. Are you ready, John?
Sure, or I don't know. I'd like to end still on a note of optimism.
Well, yeah, go for it.
Okay,
Go for it.
give us a note of optimism.
We'll have a time at the end too where we can bring it back in and end on a more optimistic note. And who knows where the lightning round will take us. So
let's do the lightning round, and I'll try to end with some
Okay.
optimistic perspective.
cool. So this is a series of semi-random questions that the goal is to answer them concisely but honestly. So this first one's a little bit of a funny one, and just for context for the audience, you are a fantastic magician. I'm just going to say that is a well-known side hobby that you have, that you do a variety of kinds of magic. So this one's slightly sarcastic, but how has your experience in magic and sleight of hand prepared you to be a successful academic?
It was random side hobby I picked up just around the pandemic time. Other people learned to bake sourdough bread. I learned how to do a Rubik's Cube magic routine. And at first it was just like this silly thing, but hey, it makes me very approachable to graduate students. Like, hey, I want to talk about science, but like, I'm just a guy and we can have fun. And also I've actually found there's a lot of nuance and understanding. To do magic well, you have to have empathy. You have to understand what the other person is thinking. And that has made me a way better presenter, scientific communicator. Because it's not just, here's my data. It's like, if I present this data, what is the audience going to think? And that's going to beg them to ask this question. So that has been a very practical way it crosses over.
Yeah, like the first rule of magic is always get the audience looking where you want them to look, I guess is like kind of the lesson there. So I'm sure that translates well. Yeah.
Nice. All right. Our second question, John. Should medical AI be explainable?
Should is this loaded word here.
Deliberately
If it can
loaded.
be, if it can be, that's great. I definitely do not think explanation is required. I definitely do not. And the classic analogy I say is like, do you know how Tylenol works? Do you know how anesthesia works? Hey, I don't either, because nobody does. But we still use it because it's proven safe, effective, and reliable. AI systems, they haven't been proven to that standard. Could you at least explain yourself since you haven't proven yourself yet?
Andy, I know you have no thoughts about this topic.
I agree 100% with what was just said there. So no notes on that. Totally agree.
Yeah.
Maybe you already answered this, and so I'll modify it if you have, but what was your first job?
My first job, officially, I did the internship at 20th Century Fox, and then my first job out of college, I was a software developer in Austin, Texas.
Okay, I would not have been surprised if there was some secret career that you started when you were like 3, where you were also making like 6 figures or something like that, given how prodigious you were as a kid. So
not in that way. I was just a nerdy kid playing video games most of the time.
Nice. All right, John, who's your favorite magician?
Oh, that's a very tough and loaded question. Well, it'll mean nothing to nobody, but you should look up Pop Hayden, he's a very old guy now. He performs the Magic Castle. I found him very inspiring. He's just very cheeky, very this like sarcastic type of humor, but also like cool magic is happening. I kind of discovered him on my kick in the past few years. I thought it was very cool. Otherwise, I took my wife to go see Matt King recently, and she absolutely loved that. He seems like he's just being as rube and kind of a dork, but actually, it's very calculated. I love that. How calculated, how smart someone's being, you don't even realize it. And then, I don't know, recently, Shin Lim was certainly like Asian guy who makes magic look cool was certainly an inspiration recently.
What maybe if I can ask a follow on, who's your favorite sort of historical magician?
Historical. Oh gosh, I don't know if I go back that far. I grew up on David Copperfield.
Okay.
David Blaine certainly inspired me a little bit years ago because David Blaine, I mean, he does these weird stunts where I do this bit where I stab myself with a needle, but like it's an illusion. He just actually does it. He just stabs himself. It's not a magic trick. He's just stabbing himself.
Yeah, like some of his tricks, he like has a fissure that he's like inserting the needle. Like he actually does it over the course of like years, which is wild.
So I would love to do something like that, but that's a little too crazy. Yeah. But what's also his early specials, it was just him doing card tricks, people, and like that's just a regular card trick. Like I could do that. That's not that hard, but it's interesting. Something that seems so basic, you can have quite an impact on how people think and feel.
My father-in-law is a magician, and he was a oncologist his whole career, just retired a couple years ago, now is a magician. And so I've learned a lot from him about what is it? The IBM. So I feel
Hmm.
like this International Brotherhood of Magicians. Andy, have you heard this term? I know you know the other IBM, right?
Yeah,
But
no, I have
Yeah.
not.
yeah.
Yeah.
So and then there's like just unlimited doctor magician puns. I'm sure actually, John, you guys are probably cross paths at some point, but there's unlimited doctor magician puns. And my favorite of his is that when he's like presenting or performing for an audience, he's like, I'm a cardiologist. And then he shows like a card
Nice.
trick out or something like
Yeah.
that. It's great. It's great fun. And our like his grandkids love it too. So it's a
If
lot of
there's a
fun.
reference or a list, though, send it to me because I'm
Yeah.
building like this Doctor Magic act right now. In fact, I'm performing tonight.
Yeah.
So it'd be great to work in some more.
I'll connect you guys. I'll connect you guys. That'll be fun. Yeah.
So,
All right, Andy.
great.
I would just like to point out there's zero chance that our listeners' language models would have been able to predict the tokens that just were auto-completed
Yeah.
there. So super fun.
The temperature just turned up
So
a
that
little
means
bit.
we are humans. It means we're humans, right?
Yeah, there you go. You passed. Okay, next question. And I actually am really interested in your take on this. Will medical AI be driven more by computer scientists or clinicians?
That's challenging. I think the computational engineering folks have a lot more power and influence in a lot of the broader world right now. And why a lot of my mission currently is communicate and get the community and like get the medical community engaged. Like, yo, this is going to be the EMR again. It's going to run all over you, and you're not going to be happy with the result. You better get involved and lead this. But it's kind of where the locus of power is. Having said that, tech companies have fallen on their face over and over again trying to bring tech to healthcare because they don't understand the complexity of the actual domain. So I think clinicians have a space getting here, balanced by clinicians often cede their power to like business people in large healthcare systems as well. So I would like to say, clinicians, let's get in here because we're the ones who really value patient care and have the right values to drive things. If I had to bet, I actually think big tech is going to push things. They're going to have more leverage in the near term, maybe longer.
All right. Last lightning round question. What was it like to go to? And you already addressed a little bit of this, but maybe you could just give us a few feelings. What was it like to go to college at the age of 13?
There was that program I was in, right? So I wasn't like the only one 13-year-old
Yeah.
kid here. There was like 20, 30 kids, and we had our own little room to hang out within. Oh, that was fine. You're just going to a program and you have a peer group. I transferred to UCLA when I was 15 years old. That was tough. That was really hard. I was a 15-year-old living in the dorms on a campus with 30,000 people, and nobody gives two craps about you because they don't have time to. There's just too many people there. I had to grow up real fast there. There were many nights, those first few weeks, like I just went to the dorm cafe. I sat there and ate dinner by myself, and it was not a great feeling. But also I was like, oh, I'm going to have to grow up. I can't just study hard and do well, and that's good enough. I have to figure out how to take control of my life and figure out where I'm going and find opportunities that can make the connections. And that was a very rapid growing experience. Here's a joke to plug that. And also, like, life happens too. We do our work, we do our hobbies, but also like life supposed to happen. I say started college at age 13, first girlfriend at age 21. So you can draw your own conclusions.
Nice. You got there, it sounds like. So, well, Jonathan, you did a great job in the lightning round. Well done.
All right, Jonathan.
Cool. So,
maybe
go ahead, Rush.
Yeah, we just have a couple, and I think we can make this end on an optimistic note here. But we have a couple sort of final big picture questions for you. And you really do straddle at least two communities. I know many more than that. And I want to ask you a question that I think is most interesting, most relevant to the sort of physicians in training who are listening to this. And medical students, residents who are interested in artificial intelligence and want to get involved. Whenever we give talks, we have a lot of great conversations with them. One of the most sort of consistent questions they ask is, okay, I'm going through medical school right now, I'm in residency, they're busy, they're studying or they're taking care of patients, but they really want to get involved in AI. And so what's your message to them specifically about what the sort of best ways are for physicians in training to get involved in artificial intelligence work?
I'm sure you guys get these too. A lot of them come through the woodwork, and sometimes I put them tests like, hey, if you really want to get involved, come to our group meeting, try this little pilot project, and most of them flake out and disappear. It's just the hype, cool, shiny object right now, and most of them don't actually have the earnestness. They want the juicy result. Everybody wants the prize. How many people are willing to do the work? So that's a thing for people to think about. On the other hand, I do want to encourage and inspire them because it's now a lot more possible. The reason I think ChatGPT was so groundbreaking, it actually wasn't a language model. GPT-3 existed like a year or two before ChatGPT blew up, right? What made it blow up was the interface. if you can chat, if you can text with somebody, you can now use this thing, right? You don't have to be a programmer. You don't have to be a data scientist. So really encourage them to think, hey, just start using these tools and trying them. And you know what's really ironic, I'm sure you guys realize this too. When people ask me this, I'll give you my answer. If you just ask the chatbot this question, it would probably give you a really pretty good answer. These kind of general type questions, how to get involved. So start learning how to try these tools yourself, use them in your own everyday life, and start asking questions about what do you think the next thing should be. And then go find people like our host right here who can connect you to the next ways to develop those resources. In the meantime, also, I would say if they're like a medical student or a resident, also go learn to be a good doctor. Like, that's not a bad thing. That will eventually be necessary and make you essential and distinguish what you can do from others towards how you can contribute to that combination. If you're a bad, and I know these people, they're really bad doctors or bad students. They don't even care about patients. They want to glorify themselves. They want to use some cool tech. They want to be a billionaire. And I really I don't make my time for these people because I feel like their values are really in the wrong place. It's like, hey, when you want to do that combination, it's really powerful and compelling. But if you don't have that value, it's going to lead you in the wrong space. And how a surprise to me was I was going to be one of those people. Give me the MD degree just so I can prescribe drugs, and then it helps me do something else. I'm going to go into industry. I'm going to do research or something like this. And it surprised me in clinical care that I liked it a lot more than I thought it'd be, or I realized it mattered a lot more and was a lot more complex and compelling than I thought it was going to be.
Cool. So I think we'll head to the last question. The first one will be pessimistic and the last one will be optimistic. So given kind of the violation of the fundamental theorem, what are you most worried or concerned about in medical AI? Do you have a realistic dystopian scenario? Are there opportunities for patient harm that are keeping you up? What's on your top 3 most worried list?
Always, patient care should be the primary value. You should have worries, like harm is going to happen, although I think but a lot of harm does happen when we don't use good tools already. On the balance, I worry about that, but I think the balance is going to be overall positive. If you look at prior industrial revolutions, it actually is a really good thing overall for everybody on average. Right? It's good that we don't all have to work on a farm or be hunter-gatherers, just barely getting enough food to survive. Now, 2% of the population with automation technologies makes enough food for everybody. That's a good thing. But in the near term, very disruptive change, it hurts people a lot in very predictable ways. Jobs will get displaced, right? And other people will be harmed, and unexpected growth in this adolescent technology is very foreseeable, unfortunately.
Got it. Okay, so now you can bring us home with something optimistic. So why are you doing this? What are you most excited about specifically with AI in healthcare?
I don't know, it's this kind of North Star, which I think is a good thing. It's like, oh, but what about this job? What about that technology? This is all in the means of something that is good for everybody. I was just on an interview. It's like, well, I'd like to think the humans are going to win against the computer next time. I'm like, you know what? If this goes well, the humans do win, and the humans are the patients, right? It's the actual populations. We're, even in technology, even as doctors, we're the intermediaries. And the whole goal of that is to actually improve patient care and help people live better lives. And now, wow, this has opened up new opportunities for democratization of access. You're worried about who's providing the best medical decision? Like tens of millions in the US alone, they can't even get to see a doctor at all. So what's happening to them? What's happening is like all sorts of compromise and harms, which we've normalized and accepted, which I think AI very optimistically is going to open up that pathway, make us smarter, better, faster, and let us have more reach and impact to reach all the patients who need us.
Cool. So that's probably a good place to end it. So John, thanks for coming on, man. This was great.
It's awesome, guys. We should hang out just for fun next time.
Totally. Yeah, I'm overdue for a trip to Stanford, so love to catch up sometime.
Be in touch.
Thanks so much, John. This was great.
This copyrighted podcast from the Massachusetts Medical Society may not be reproduced, distributed, or used for commercial purposes without prior written permission of the Massachusetts Medical Society. For information on reusing NEJM Group podcasts, please visit the permissions and licensing page at the NEJM website.